Ron Howard has always been the quiet observer of Hollywood. From Opie Taylor to Richie Cunningham to the Academy Award-winning director behind Apollo 13 and A Beautiful Mind, he spent a lifetime telling other people's stories while keeping his own locked away. But for decades, one story sat heavy in his heart. The truth about Jim Nabors, the man who made America laugh as Gomer Pyle, but hid his deepest struggles behind that goofy grin. For years, Ron stayed silent, out of loyalty, love, and respect for a man who gave him more than just laughter. He gave him an early lesson in how Hollywood's brightest lights often hide the darkest secrets. Ron was barely a teenager when he met Jim Nabors on the Andy Griffith Show. Ron was the beloved little Opie, Andy's wide-eyed son, a child star whose innocence charmed millions. Jim was the unexpected breakout, a one-episode guest star who turned Gomer Pyle, the bumbling, sweet gas station attendant, into an icon of 1,960 seconds television. To the world, Jim was the walking punchline with his golly and a shucks charm. But off camera, Ron saw something different. A man wrestling with the heavy burden of being different in a world that demanded perfect smiles and perfect lies. In those days, Hollywood was a place where certain truths could never be spoken out loud. Jim Nabors, with his towering voice and open heart, was a gay man at a time when that was not only taboo, it was career suicide. Rumors swirled constantly about his private life, feeding gossip columns that delighted in tearing down the gentle giant America thought they knew. Some insiders claimed he and Rock Hudson had secretly wed a myth they laughed off, but which also exposed the brutal scrutiny Jim faced. For Ron, watching Jim navigate that spotlight while protecting his truth was one of the earliest glimpses, got of how cruel Hollywood could be behind its shiny facade. And yet, Jim never let that cruelty define him. Ron remembers the man who stayed late on set, comforting nervous guest stars, or quietly lifting Ron's spirits when the pressures of child stardom became too much. He recalls the warm, deep voice that could drop the Gomer Pyle act and speak wisdom few grown-ups could muster. When the cameras stopped rolling, Jim became a protector and uncle figure who showed Ron that kindness could exist in the cutthroat world of show business. After the Andy Griffith Show, Jim spun Gomer into his own series, Gomer Pyle, U.S.C., which turned that simple gas station attendant into an unlikely Marine. The show was a smash, but behind the scenes, Jim struggled. He was expected to be on all the time to be funny, sweet, harmless. Rumors about his personal life never stopped swirling. He found refuge in his singing aside that shocked fans who only knew him as Gomer. His operatic baritone stunned audiences and gave him a place where he could be his true self. If only for a few minutes at a time. Years passed, and while Ron's career exploded behind the camera, Jim faded into the shadows of Hollywood, living quietly in Hawaii with his longtime partner Stan Cadwallader. They stayed out of the tabloids as much as possible, building a sanctuary where Jim could just be Jim. But even as the world changed and acceptance grew, Jim stayed private. He never paraded his personal life for the cameras, and Ron respected that silence, never speaking publicly about what he knew, because the trust they built on. That old soundstage was worth more than any headline. When Jim died in 2017, tributes poured in from old co-stars and fans who remembered the gentle giant who made them smile. Ron Howard stayed quiet, processing his grief privately. But recently at an event celebrating the Andy Griffith Show, Ron finally opened up about what Jim meant to him. He spoke of the kindness, the music, the behind-scenes encouragement. He spoke of how Jim helped him see that Hollywood's biggest stars are often its loneliest souls, and that real courage isn't in the spotlight, but in living your truth, even when the world refuses to accept it. Ron's voice cracked when he talked about Jim's final years, how he found peace in Hawaii, singing for neighbors, tending his garden, and loving without fear. He called Jim one of the bravest people I ever met, not for any public act, but for surviving decades of whispers, innuendo, and judgment, yet never letting bitterness creep in. He said Jim taught him that family isn't just blood,